Bingo.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, whatever time you ingratiate us and entertain yourselves with what we'd like to present with you today. I am privileged to be here and learn at the feet of Mike Jones this morning. This is one of those situations that a young, curious individual revels in. And we may not be long this morning, but I think we will be strong because we are going to deal with some pinpoint issues. I have the privilege of not even being on the clock, but to ask one of the one of the foremost political minds in the world about some political issues this evening. And so we're going to get right in it. First of all, good morning, Mr. Mike Jones.
Good morning, Larry, and it's a pleasure to be. It's always a pleasure to be in your company. It's a pleasure to be back. I've been gone for a minute, contemplating some stuff, so I thought I'd show back up because I missed you
Well, we're glad you did. You know, Jesus had to go to the wilderness and come back, and Moses had to
guys.
go up there and get a word. So we know you're coming back stronger. So let's get right into it. We want to deal with an issue that has been meandering its way through the media, and this is an issue that
That's a great term, Larry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
this is an issue that people are looking at some symptoms in a micro aspect with respect to Black voter turnout. But if we look at the macro problem, I think your analysis is best in terms of now they want to couch it in terms of the Black male not voting for Kamala Harris. But I'd like to get your take on this whole piece, Mr. Jones.
Okay. First of all, just from a macro political standpoint, if you were putting uh, together a campaign strategy for any race at any level, and you kind of had four quadrants of voters, and somebody told you you're going to get 60 to 65% of these two quadrants or cohorts. You're going to get 85 to 92% of this cohort, and you're going to lose not by a lot, but within shouting this by a field goal, you're going to lose this other cohort over here, which is the biggest cohort. But the other three together is substantial. So let me put that in real terms. The 85 to 92% cohort for Democrats is the Black vote. Okay. And I know we're going to come back to this, but just for the record, the way you get 90% of the Black vote is Black men turn out and vote too. So the reality is that vote is there in substantial numbers. The 60 to 65% are the Hispanic and Asian vote. So if somebody asks a campaign strategist, what do we have to do to win the race? They wouldn't say you need more turnout from the 92% and the 65%. We gotta do something about it cutting into that margin over there with the 47, 48% that we get. That's the white vote. The interesting part about that is just mathematically a fact that a percentage of a big number is more impactful than the percentage of a little number. So 1 or 2% change in the Black vote really don't move nothing. 3% change in the white vote is a major movement because the number's big. So an idiot would focus on the bigger number, okay? You wouldn't have to be real bright to say, why would you mess around over here? You got enough of this. And the historical context or reality is Democrats have not won majority of the white vote since 1964 with Lyndon Johnson. Okay, so let me benchmark that for you. In 1964, the voting right, the Civil Rights Bill passed. In 1965, the Voting Rights Bill passed. In 1968, Richard Nixon ran for president using the Southern strategy. Majority of white folks voted Republican. White folks who had voted Democratic based on their economic interests voted Republican. Ronald Reagan in 1980 opens his presidential campaign in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Okay? And the majority of white folks vote for Ronald Reagan. George H.W. Bush uses the Willie Horton thing. Now, in those days, those could be whistles, okay, just to remind white folks what they need to do. One of the things that has happened now, while you get Trump with a bullhorn, is the demographics of America has changed. If you take 1960, and I'll just take that as a benchmark, 85% of the country was white. 85% of the country, was white. 11% was black, and less than 4% was Hispanic. So you could be a Democratic Republic and an apartheid state, because the majority of white folks could vote for stuff that disenfranchised black folks and others, and could still call themselves a Democratic Republic. In 2020, the country is 51% white. It's 13% black, 19% Hispanic, and 7% Asian. So almost over 40+% of the population are people of color, and about 15% now born someplace else, when only 1 or 2% in 1960. So when you look at what you're seeing now with Trump, you are looking at the white reaction to the paradigm shift of American demographics. And you should think about it the way we think about, or should think about, Reconstruction and the Civil War and the reaction to Reconstruction, because it's literally the same thing. Okay, different setting, century and a half later, but literally the same issue: the white reaction to losing privilege. And their problem now is they don't have the numbers to reimpose an apartheid state democratically. So the only way you can do it is in an autocratic way, and that requires you to undermine the rights and privileges of white folks in order to maintain the privilege of white folks. So the reality is that's the context of this, and the white establishment that includes black enablers, we don't talk about it in those terms, because those are the situations that we're in. We choose to make Trump the instigator of all of this, when he is really just a product of all of this. Okay, that Trump exists because of this other thing. This other thing don't exist because of Trump. And once you understand the problem is that, you also understand the problem is an issue for white people. Okay, that black people, Hispanic, Asians cannot do anything about the white cognitive dissonance that comes from this paradigm. So go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, well, Mike, I love your analogy. I'd like for you to share this with the audience. The analogy that we have with respect to the game being on the line.
Oh, okay. The way I kind of broke this down, and I'm trying to write a piece about it right now, is if you think of a football game, and let's take the Super Bowl. But there are three elements of a professional football team. There's the offense, the defense, and the special teams. To win a championship game, all three of those elements have to play well in their part. The interesting thing about football is none of these folks are all on the field at the same time. They play segments of the game. The offense has to score enough enough points. The defense has to get enough stops, and special teams have to, if they can't make big plays, they got to not allow big plays to be made. So as we come down the wire in this campaign, if you make, for my analogy, for my metaphor, black folks to offense, we're going to put up enough points to win. If you're in a pro football game and your offense gives you 23, 24 points, they've given you enough points to win. If your special team don't turn the ball,
and that represents the 95% of the black vote that we will provide.
Right, exactly.
That's the foundation.
That's the foundation. We now have scored enough to win. If the special teams don't turn the ball over and don't give up any big plays, they've done their job. That's the 60 to 65% of the Asians and the Hispanics. We are now at the end of the fourth quarter, couple 3 minutes to go. They got the ball. They got to go 80 yards, and we got a 4 or 5 point lead, which means a field goal don't do them no good. They have to score a touchdown. What we need in this moment is for the defense to get a stop, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we as the offense, they and our Hispanic and Asian brothers and sisters as a special team, we on the sideline looking like everybody else. So you don't look over here and say, well, if you hadn't missed a field goal, that ain't what we're talking about now. We put 24-25 on the board. Okay, you can't ask for no more than that because they pros too. I mean, they showed up to play. Okay, and you say, well, if y'all had broke back one of those kicks or punts or a touchdown, yeah, but they didn't, and we played professionals. They came out here to stop us from doing that, but they didn't give nothing up.
And so the bottom line is white America. This is a white problem, and white America is going to have to come to the ball.
They're gonna have to show up. They're gonna have to show up,
and they're gonna have to get us to stop at the end. And so that little 45% that they got, we may need 48% this time.
Right. Now we ain't talking about turning the whole table. We are talking about we need to stop. Okay.
That's it.
You need to keep them out the end zone. And the way I have phrased this over the years, that all of these political issues in America come down to what do white people who know better, what are they willing to do about white people who won't do better? So if it's unimaginable that Dick Cheney, who's the Darth Vader of Republican politics, and Bernie Sanders, who's Obi-Wan Kenobi Democratic politics are literally on the same side of this issue. Okay, that's like Darth Vader and Obi-Wan have teamed up against the Empire. Okay, hey,
And you got John Bolton on the same side as them.
that's what I'm talking
It's
about, man.
insane.
That's insane. And you can't get movement in white people. And literally, this comes down to white women, because literally, Democrats don't get the majority of white women.
Correct.
As Republicans are on female issues, they don't. The majority of white women didn't vote for Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Okay, so overturning Roe versus Wade, with the damage and carnage it has created in just this short time, if white women vote for Donald Trump, if the men who say they care about white women vote for Donald Trump, that's where we go lose the game at. It ain't got nothing to do with no brothers bitching about Obama, and they got something to bitch about too, by the way. But if white folks show up, man, don't. When we start watching the film after this, I don't want to hear nothing about the defense. I mean, about our offense. And Kamala Harris, for the record, she has been a perfect candidate. The execution of their campaign since July 21st has not been good. It hasn't been exciting. It has been perfect. If everybody would say, and that's what pundits and talking heads do, well, because they got to talk about something during the game. So you said he should have done this, should have done that. If you watch this and you know what you're looking at, and for folks who are fans, they get anxious on every play and all that kind of stuff. But if you watch this game, if she loses, it won't be because she didn't do everything to win and they didn't execute at a high level. It will go back to this issue of principally white women and the white men that say they love them. Period. That's the race. Matter of fact, if you're on the offense, you can go take a shower because the game is over for you. Okay. Okay. Because it ain't gonna be enough time to get back on the field if they score. If Trump and them score, okay, you ain't got enough time to pull this out. So that's when you see them. They took off their helmet. They sitting back up. They ain't even standing on the sideline because they know they ain't going back in. They ain't looking at their iPads. The line coach ain't talking to nobody. He said, "Man, we done. It's all on you."
That is profound. That is and so this notion of individuals blaming black men, which is popular, which is really a popular trope. Where is that coming from?
Well, first of all, I think it's rooted in the notion or the inability of white people to look in the mirror and confront themselves. Okay, so at that point, any excuse will do. Okay, and black men have always been the most convenient other to pin stuff on. Okay, so don't think of this as any empirical. You're muted, Larry.
Mike, you look like you froze up.
Oh, okay, got it. I think there's no empirical basis for blaming black men. Fundamentally, it's white people in America unable to confront themselves in the mirror and say, "We got to do something. We got to put your defense got to say, we had a meeting and we got to play better. Okay, period. Don't worry about this other stuff. We got to play better if we gonna win this game. And the reason you blame black men, because white folks blame black men for everything. It don't make sense. It's like the police. I stopped you, locked you up. What did I do? You didn't do nothing. You black, man, and I need to lock somebody up tonight. So that's so. And brothers know they ain't got to do shit to get locked up. Okay, all you got to do is be black in America.
That's it. That is it.
That's it.
That is the
Don't
qualifier.
overthink it. Don't overthink it.
Not overthink it. That is the qualifier. Dr. Christmas, are you with us? I think he may be transitioning from one location to another.
Okay.
Okay, there he is.
I'm with you.
Okay, Dr. Christmas. And he's sharp too, Mike. So he's
Okay.
yeah, he's on the clock. Somebody's about to pay. Somebody's about to pay. I want to get you.
I wish they were about to pay.
Yeah, well, as long as they owe you, you'll never be broke, brother. We're doing
Exactly.
We're doing God's
Exactly.
yeah, I'm glad to see
I
you.
agree with Mike 100%. You know, it's always the easiest thing to do is to blame the black man, and that this does come down to the white woman, and this abortion issue is going to play a major role in that, and it has been playing a major role every time it's been on the ballot here recently, and we're going to see that again. It's going to play a major role because white women want their daughters to be able to get those abortions.
Let me ask you.
Well, Gerald, it's not literally just abortion. I think people were kind of simple-minded about it, and they made it an issue about people choosing to get abortion. This is really, as we've seen, a major health care issue. This is not, I mean, this is simple-minded right-wing white men coming up with a political trope that they thought had some value, and they are doing extraordinary damage to the health of women throughout the country, and they're so ignorant, so stupid, they don't even know how to get off the problem that they created.
Right.
Let me, Doc. We are joined now by Dr. Alexander. I am boy. I did not know how much I missed seeing all you brothers together. I mean, I'm overwhelmed. Good to see you all, Doc. I'm going to try and give you a very, very quick summation of the great Mike Jones analogy that we are going to have to trademark right now. He analyzed this current in light of the blame game. Folks putting the election on black men. Dr. Alexander, Mike Jones put it in these terms. As a political strategist, if I get 95% of one sector, 65% of another sector, I've done my job. Beyond that, 95% of the black vote is tantamount to a football game being the offense, putting up enough points. And 65% of the Hispanic and Asian vote is enough for the special teams to have done their job. Now we are in the last 2 minutes of the game. The defense has got to get a stop. That defense, ladies and gentlemen, are the white voters. The white voters have not, as you very well know, have not voted for the Democratic candidate in mass since 1964 or so. And so we need to stop with them. So this is not, we can, you can talk to President Obama, Magic Johnson, all the rest of them that are blaming black males, but this isn't a black problem. As Mr. Jones states, this is a white folks problem. We've got to decide whether or not, we're going to find out whether or not, white folks, what white folks are going to do about white folks. And he also opined that, you've got Dick Cheney, Darth Vader, and Bernie Sanders, Obi-Wan Kenobi on the same side. So, you know, the issue we've got to reconcile with is, what are white women going to do?
Good morning,
Good
and I
morning.
too miss
Good
everyone.
morning, Charles.
And I agree, and again, this is one of those situations where this is all knowable information. This information uh you can Google voter turnout, you can Google voting trends, and um and it lays out pretty clearly, you know, how people have been voting and where votes can come from. And we because the average voter probably isn't doing his or her independent research, um, he or she becomes necessarily vulnerable to the propaganda. And so then we get distracted by, whatever it is that we think, black men are doing. We certainly need black men to vote, but I'm more inclined to believe that, more of them are going to just not vote at all than even vote for Trump. But that's again to the point made by the Mike Jones. That's just a part of the larger pie, and then there's never the account for the fact that, as much as we keep talking about, where we've gotten to in where we've gotten to in terms of, diversity and this, that, or the other, we still have the overwhelming majority of white folks voting for white supremacy. And that is the battle. And so um, the Democratic Party doesn't work hard enough to speak truth into the mind. I mean, the Democratic Party will refute the blatant lies, but the Democratic Party does not work hard enough to engage any aspects, of the coalition.
Hmm.
There's no real educational process, no real voter educational process that goes on. Um, I'm down in Atlanta right now, and been having some conversations with a couple of organizations that are. So there's a women's activity going on today, a Get Out and Vote initiative, and then next Saturday there's a Black Men's Get Out and Vote initiative. And just last night, the Nappy Roots have a craft brewery here, right near the AUC, and they hosted a Black Men's Forum, um, which again, all those things are good, but what we need voter education. We don't need just telling people to go vote. That's part of what some of the folks are saying. You still have folks saying they're not clear on what her agenda is, and a simple conversation with most black folks you come in contact with clearly don't know what the Democratic platform is and can't distinguish it from the Republican platform. And so there's no real work being done in those places, which ultimately makes us vulnerable to the propaganda.
Charles.
I think that's intentional too, Dr. Alexander, especially with the local Democratic Party here in Missouri, because I always feel like we still are fighting a civil war inside the local Democratic Party here in Missouri, that it's intentional that they don't want to do that voter education and that voter development in the Black community, because then that would make us more of a internal danger to them. They just want to be in control and just have us following the vote without any kind of educational process.
I'm going to make intellectual, philosophical, I guess, observation comment. Uh, Winston Churchill has two great quotes about democracy. The first one is most people are familiar with. He says democracy is the worst form of government except for all the rest. His second great quote is one most people are not that familiar with. He says the best argument, the most effective argument against democracy is to spend 5 minutes talking to the average voter. Okay. And fundamentally, if you take a look at the Western canon, which is the canon which we were all educated in, and you brothers have advanced degrees, Juris Doctors and a PhD. I got a bachelor's degree from commuter college, right? But I did go to the university when you actually got a liberal education. So I got introduced to to Plato and Aristotle and stuff. And it is hard to find a serious thinker in the Western canon over the last 2,000 years that is a big fan of democracy. And it's fundamentally because nobody has that kind of confidence in the intelligence and effort the average person is willing to put in to be competent at self-governance. Now, the problem in America, and I say most of Western Europe recognize that, and they structure their politics accordingly. America is a much younger country, and it still believes this creation myth. Okay, and these creation stories kill you. Now they don't hurt older countries because they're so old. Everybody know they myths. Okay, you know, they like Santa Claus. You talk about it, but you don't believe it. Okay, nobody takes it serious. In America, we take serious that somehow Americans are exceptional, that democracy creates inherent good. I would just point out to our listeners that everything bad that has happened to us since we've been here has been a function of American democracy. The codification of slavery was in the Democratic Republic of the United States of America with a written constitution. The fugitive slave laws were passed by the United States Congress that was democratically elected by the white voters of the United States. The entire Black Codes Jim Crow era was ratified by the democratic political culture of the United States. So there is no inherent guaranteed outcomes from democracy. And the fact that Black enablers mouth the same rhetoric that white establishment figures do, we have to save American democracy. If you've lived the Black experience in America, American democracy leaves a lot to be desired because American white people leave a lot to be desired. And that's what a Plato or Aristotle or anybody else would have been talking about the flaw in democracy is the flaw of the human character. So the focus of this campaign, to Charles's point, really should be having a meaningful, honest confrontation with white people the way Sean Connery had with I forgot who was in the touch with him. I'm gonna say Elliot Ness, but I can't think who the other actor is. And remember
Kevin
when
Costner.
Kevin Costa. And remember when he got shot and he's down, he grabbed him by the collar and said, "What are you prepared to do?"
Right,
This is Chicago, and that's Al Capone.
right.
So what are you prepared to do? That's literally what, and the the end of the movie was emotionally satisfying because he threw Frank Nitti off the roof. He
Right.
didn't take him downstairs, and Frank Nitti deserved to be thrown off the roof. Okay, and so this our conversation with white America should be like Sean Connery to Kevin Costner in the Untouchable. And I actually wrote that once. Now that I think about it, and that is, what are you prepared to do, man? That's wait a minute. That's all something going back to this metaphor I started with. If I'm the defense coordinator, I'm looking at the defense man and say, I need to stop. I'm not looking for an explanation. I ain't looking for a strategy. I need to stop. That's it. The game, we get to stop. You get to stop. We win the game. You don't get to stop. We lose, and it don't matter how we lost. What if nobody else didn't do? Because right now, everything is about this stop. Period.
And I don't want to have all these movements with vagina hats have the day after
Right.
the election and all of
Right.
that.
Right.
You got a
Right.
chance now to stand up and in the words of Reverend Smith after he's preached and got a collection, it's in your hands now, deacons.
Now, right. Matter of fact, and Larry, if you're a real player, that's what you want.
That's what you want.
If you're a player, you want the game to come down to the play you got to make.
That's correct. That's correct. So that having said that, I mean, we've been in the midst of a number of different events since we've last met. We've had some untimely, I would consider untimely ascensions. We've lost Frankie Beverly, we've lost James Earl Jones, we've lost John Amos. In those, and we're at a critical time right now where we just don't have, we can't take anything for granted. Every minute needs to be certainly contemplated with, and executed with intentionality as it sits. And this is a time with this election right now where this isn't your run-of-the-mill election. This is, this is not there are some things that Black men certainly need to demand to have an accounting for, because we have continued to vote for the Democratic Party, and in too many instances, our status has not changed in this society. Throughout multiple Democratic administrations, locally and nationally. So it's really I think level setting for you to state what you did today, Mike Jones, with respect to our putting the actual onus on the community who's responsible at this point for the outcome of this election. And I think we need to quit victim blaming as a whole. And I wanted to ask you this, Dr. Alexander. Mike, I have taken this liking to the book Black AF History, just as you have.
Right.
And they do an incredible, Michael Harriot does an incredible job of chronicling the vote and the sacrifices that have been made. There's one chapter that specifically states, I think it's called something to the effect of blood, blood on the floor, or the blood was covered on the floor, where these, black, our early ancestors had the temerity after the passage of the Emancipation Proclamation to vote, and these thugs en masse killed 40 or 50 black folks, and they were never prosecuted. And they said that blood was over 2 or 3 inches high on the actual floors of this facility where they were. So my question is, with respect to this perceived voter apathy that we've had, how much of any voter apathy is really just epigenetics, if any? Because this is, even in the 60s, we still had this voter intimidation. There are places in the South, and we try and we find ourselves attempting to foster an excuse. We call the displacement of black folks from the South to the North the Great Migration, when it was actually a displacement. We were chased out of the South. We were chased from lands that we had. This was, right in line with what Rutherford B. Hayes did. So, I mean, how much of that still is in play, Dr. Alexander?
All of it is in play. It has just morphed. It's just morphed to take on different shapes. And so we still have voter suppression. We still have, like, they stripped the Voting Rights Act. I mean, and so here we are now. The Voting Rights Act isn't even a campaign issue. That was allegedly what the dude ran for the last time. He said he's going to get the Voting Rights Act extended. It's not even being discussed right now. And so, and that's how foolish it is when you have, and so the other part of this is, just kind of quickly back to this black men and Donald Trump. It don't just be black men standing behind Donald Trump when you see the little goofy, rally pictures. It's a bunch of sisters back there too. And so some of these folks were already, some of these folks were already conservative. It is what it is. The issue is that they listen to the foolishness, and in order to align yourself with what has become, you know, clear party politics and and personified in Donald Trump is clearly white supremacy. You can't talk that stuff away. And so all of that stuff that existed in days of old that have resulted ultimately in us paying homage to Benny Lou Hamer and Medgar Evers and Dr. King, all of those same things still exist, right? And so I choose to look at it from a more nuanced position, in that it is, if you look at well-being statistics over the past 30 years, 40 years, or whatever, in the main, we are doing better than what we were doing. And so then the thing is to be, what is it when we're saying, so what is it, where specifically are we struggling? And I think we have to be more clear and specific with regard to that. And then that also ties into how we see, party platforms and politics. And so what I mean is that if 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 our goal is economic parity, then that we ain't gonna never catch up because of the foundation of it. And so that in and of itself is, you know, and I'm not even saying we can't fight for it. I am saying that to have that be to be disproportionately weighted is problematic because you can't catch up with 200 or 300 years of free labor. It ain't no, there's nothing to offset that. And so,
So
yes, sir.
yeah, you raised a point that I want to comment on, Ray's brother. The whole notion of economic parity is a ludicrous idea in a capitalist society. So
That ain't
I
even what it's
mean,
predicated on.
yeah, that's what I mean. The whole, so only an idiot who has no understanding of the predicate of capitalism would talk about economic parity in a capitalist run economy when the whole idea of capitalism is to distort the relationship between people economically. So the reality is there are black people who individually can catch up. Magic Johnson, Jay-Z, Oprah, they've overcome 300 years, 240 years of slavery, 100 years in one lifetime, and they now are in the multimillionaire, billionaire class. But most of the white folks in America don't have economic parity. If
At all.
now, yeah, now they got more than we got, but there is no economic parity in America for anybody. So a black critique of American society that does not have a chapter on capitalism and a critique of capitalism from the perspective of black people writ large is a useless philosophy. Or you get everybody wanting to be Oprah and Jay-Z. And that's how capitalism works. It's magic on white folks, making them think that one day they're going to be this. And the reality is, it's like being at the carnival, man, or the casino. 97% of the people come out losers. That's how the casino makes money. That's how the carnival, you sign up to buy a ticket for the games and stuff, and they let somebody win every now and then. A little kid walking around with some other suckers will spend money thinking they got a chance to win. It's like the casino. The whole game is structured so you can't win. So the fact that we don't have, and at one point we did, but I'll say before you all were born, really, we did have a critique of capitalism. Dr. King had one, okay? The Black Panthers had one. I mean, the built-in inequities of capitalism was a thing at one time, and people talked about it. What Ronald Reagan era had done is basically made everybody think that they could be, they was going to be rich too, and that's just a sucker's play. So the real discussion about economic equity is in America. As long as America is a laissez-faire capitalist system, there won't be any. In Europe, Western Europe, you have some semblance of economic equity because they restrain market capitalism. Okay, they've been around long enough to know that you can't trust business people or capitalists with the welfare of the society. So it's a much more balanced arrangement And so there are a set of public goods that at least maintain a floor historically, post World War II, anyway, have maintained a kind of floor on the disparities of capitalism and put a cap on how much a robber baron can actually rob. You can't stop them from stealing, but you do say in Europe you got to put some of that shit back. Okay, you can't take that much out tonight. Okay, cause and I've always made the metaphor, not the metaphor, the analogy, the difference between the mafia and American corporations is the mafia actually pays off on the numbers. Okay, gangsters who don't have to pay nobody. If you hit the numbers, you got your money. It's only American corporations that they take your money and don't never want you to make the bid and don't never want to pay nobody. Okay, and
Complain about big business and then, complain about big government and then ask the government to bail them out of their debt.
that's right.
And then convince those same people we've been talking about, the white supremacists who ain't got no money either, to then say that's the right way to go. Because now you're curtailing jobs, the same jobs they ain't got.
Wait a minute. Now, and now you know why the idea of democracy troubled Plato so, okay? Because ultimately what he said that in democratic societies, because that's the way people are built, they're prone to be fooled and tricked and seduced by con men and demagogic characters and all that kind of, because they make it sound, they take people off the hook, they create somebody for you to hate, and the reality is the reason you can make a good living as a con man because people are easy to con, man. I mean, that's that is the only reason me, you, and Larry ain't is because we were raised better, okay? But it's also why you ain't stuck in no factory either, okay?
And Mike, the flip side of what you and Dr. Alexander just stated is that in the event that you are not rich, it's
Right.
because these people over here are preventing you from being rich.
Right.
So we've got, so that's where the demagoguery comes in.
Right.
Full throttle. It's not you. It's not
Right.
you as an individual. Your whiteness is enough. But
Right.
if we attack these Black people, these Hispanic people, these Asian people, these Russians this month, these Venezuelans this month, whomever it is, they're the ones that are holding you back. And guess what? I'm the only one that can keep them from attacking you.
I can keep you safe. And
I'm the only
so
one.
it's the same thing over and
And
over and over again. And at the end of the day, back to our initial piece, then the DNC then essentially buys into that same foolishness as well. So we know that that's the Republican playbook, but the
but the
the DNC in
DNC
a less demonstrative way does the same thing.
But the DNC is part of the establishment of the whole thing.
Of the whole piece.
I mean, I put it like this: in every game, you got an inside guy, outside game, no matter what the kind he is. So for sometimes I got a hard edge with Trump and them, and that works for the white folks who are stupid. And then I hustle Black folks with a different kind. But I'm hustling everybody, man.
Everybody. And so we end up in these spaces where we end up in a space where we misapply the little bit of understanding that we have. We still misapply it because we're still not doing the stuff that So when this education was being provided by us to us, we're not even using those principles. So we say, oh, I'm a student of Malcolm. Well, Malcolm said, then you have to lock down that which is nearest to you. You have to lock down your community. You control the politics and the economies of your community. We're not doing that either, right? And so where we have an opportunity to do that, like we don't have consistent conversations about black flight. We talk about white flight all the time. Negroes with money will leave and follow white folks so they ain't got to do the work of community building and maintaining. Happens all the time. Be in a space where you can ascend to school board positions. Be in a space where you can ascend to city council positions, and then will leave and go live in isolated places with white folks and have your sons and daughters spend their high school careers depressed and anxious so that you ain't got to do no work and you can feel good about your nice house. We make those decisions when we can make critical uh, critical we can have critical and needed impact on infrastructure wherever we are. And so, but we don't do that. And so to the degree that we don't do that, and the fact that these things, the overarching piece of this remains the same, not necessarily everybody's individual, growth or benefit doesn't necessarily, everybody's individual growth arc is what it is, and that too is a function of this larger thing. Everybody ain't going at the same time all the time. That's another vestige of capitalism. But the other thing that hasn't changed, it just looks different, is Dr. King told us about the three evils, right? So racism, militarism, and
Capitalism.
and yes,
Capitalism.
So that those that is fundamentally what the issue is. It's always going to be, because that's the nature of the beast. That's what this thing is. And so if we're not at least being thoughtful and honest about what it is that we're looking at, then it's just very difficult for us to get to where we're going. But I wanted to also mention, kind of in response, Larry, you were saying, so we lost John Amos, we lost James Earl Jones, and we lost Frankie Beverly. All those jokers is 80 years old.
Right.
And so they had a great run. They outlived the Matrix.
Yeah, Frankie was 77.
Frankie went on a farewell tour,
and
that literally was that.
It was, man.
How else do you close this thing out? Yeah. Right? James Earl Jones went out having just negotiated a voice deal with Lucas, which I'm sure takes care of his and whatever else he wants taken care of into eternity. They had a good run. They had a good deal. Now, what do we still need to look at? The fact that whatever it is you can die of, we die of more. And so, within these things, we should be able to see what our issues are. Those three men, exceptional lives, but the masses of us need health care, right? And so you're not going to get that from the Republican Party. Like that Project 25 thing, that stuff is a thing. It's not a Trump thing. That's a white supremacist thing. And that's a fight that we have to be having all the time. But we got to understand it as such, right?
So
yes,
I want to and
you're breaking up a little bit, Mike Jones. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I want to go back to Charles Hayes' a while ago, plus what he just got through with. And that is our condition. So, Larry, you've heard me say this a lot of times, and you lawyers say you got to have a theory of the case.
Right.
And one of the things we no longer have is a black theory of the case. What we have not accommodated, matter of fact, us and right-wing white folks are the most intellectually obsolete people in the country because we're still in a frame or a paradigm of the binary America. For 350 years, you could understand America in terms of black and white because they had killed off all the Native Americans and indigenous people, and wasn't nobody here but us and them. So everything came down to every issue was a black-white issue. Going back to my point about the demographic change of the last 50, 60 years, America is no longer a binary black and white society. You have all now these other elements in a more integrated world that interact, and technology has changed the culture has changed the politics, and our frame of reference is at a minimum 60 years old. And if you look at the data, and Charles is right, all this stuff is Google. You don't have to go to the Library of Congress to find out. Is that of the adults who are eligible to vote next month, 60% of them were born after 1970. 40% of the country is under 40 years old, and all of them were born after in late 1980s, 90s. What I'm alluding to, and if you're a baby boomer like me, we're 22% of the population, and the folks older than me represent about 7% of the population. Okay, so that means the country is being run by who have no relationship to the experience of at least half the country, and that ain't counting the kids. And it's this misalignment.
Mike, the country is being run by whom?
Making the decision.
Mike, the country is being run by whom?
Old people.
Okay, because you broke up a little bit.
Old people. Yeah, what I'm saying is by people who were born in a different era.
Okay.
Or governing people whose lived experience is nothing like theirs. If you're 25 years old today, a black president ain't a big deal, even if you're black or white, because you were 9 years old when Barack Obama got elected. You've already seen a woman run for president. Kamala Harris ain't a big deal. So this existential angst that a 70-year-old white man got about it, I guarantee you, even if he's a bigoted white boy at 22, he ain't the same kind of bigot his grandfather is. Okay? Because the culture just doesn't produce that anymore. You can't look at a commercial on American television and features of an America didn't exist when you were a kid, and damn sure when I was a kid. So our analysis of our situation and the way we look, we have not developed enough thinkers who are trying to do what Du Bois and Woodson did, and that's wrestle with our condition in this place, in this moment. So what you really got to talk about is, what does it mean to be black in an America that's no longer a binary black and white country, and where white people are not going to be the majority. They're going to be the biggest minority. That's a completely different America than that. And we're still just 12% of that population. The interesting part is when the country was 85% white, we were 11 to 13% of the population. When the country is only 51% black, white, which is 12% of the population. So not only is this paradigm shifting for white folks, it's for us. And we have never had a discussion about what it means to be black in America in the 21st century. Barack Obama and all the smart people we got, and you know what? And it'd be like talking to a basketball coach who doesn't understand that there's a 3-point line and a shot clock in college basketball. The game he's talking about don't exist no more. Okay, it's still
but Mike,
basketball.
He's looking for the big
exactly.
man. He's talking about working down to the big man.
No, that's another one of your great metaphors, because I was one of the things I was going to bring up in terms of how we're off and how, you know, the party politics are off and it's detrimental to us. So this perspective that, you know, the Democratic Party has always been closely aligned to the unions. All right. Well,
Right.
the unions only represent 10% of the workforce now. It used to be 20% in the 80s and was higher in the 60s when it was actually a thing relative to the politics. But it's only down to 10, and that 10 ain't manufacturing.
Right.
The largest portion of that 10 is education. It's teachers unions.
Governmental
Right.
unions, the public sector stuff.
The public sector stuff. And so that as a linchpin in the strategy is problematic. That's another one of those things where we don't recognize the shot clock and the 3-point line and all of that kind of stuff. We're not looking at the change in dynamics of what is going on around us and how that impacts how we move. You know, and so you mentioned Reagan. You know, that guy had a long run of hurting black folks. It didn't start when he got into the presidency, you know, but they were wreaking havoc. He was wreaking havoc on the West Coast. He is an arch, you know, or was an arch white supremacist. But you know, we kind of managed him in our thought pattern the same way we manage this clown now, in that we try to find ways to caricature his being as opposed to paying attention to the harm done. And so that too is a failed process because it absolutely comes from liberal white folks. That is the stuff that Saturday Night Live was and is made of. And so we're not getting, you know, the political commentary. So because I'm not against political satire. I'm not against, you know, Mark Twain. I'm not against George Carlin. Love George Carlin. What I am against is stupidity and making light of the real issues, and that's what we've been vulnerable to. And we start to believe that somehow or another, to be able to laugh at these enemies and these wrongdoers and harm doers, that we can somehow laugh them off, as opposed to mount legitimate responses predicated on the record, predicated on the documentation. So we have all these conversations about Title IX and what Title IX has done. And one of the things that Title IX has done was elevate, you know, white women, because it gave in the wake of the the civil rights battles that that we could actually legitimately claim to have won, you flip the script a little bit. Well, now I don't have to hire uh black folks because I can hire white women. They too are a minority. And Title IX, in fact, is a part of the 64 Civil Rights Act. And initially Title VII, and it's an amendment to that title. And so what we see is them using the litigation that was or the legislation, excuse me, that was you know and implemented to actually benefit us get flipped in much the same way that they use the 14th Amendment for their own devices. And so we don't study these things, so we don't see and understand these things as such. And so the same thing that they did with Title IX, they then did with the unions. So in addition to just union busting, they just started hiring, you know, what used to be the angry white dude who was a union steward. They just put that dude in middle management, and now he gatekeeps the union. And so you suppress the union, and so now we got a union that's really just a public sector union. Doesn't impact manufacturing. I think manufacturing is like 5%, 5 to 7% of manufacturing is unionized. And so you still got these wage disparities that exist, right? These are real things to be fought. But in order for you to strategize and fight them, you got to understand you got to understand that we're shooting a three. So if you don't understand that, you keep fighting the same battles and you keep getting the same results.
Over and over and over again. Mike, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, basically, I want to put an exclamation point to what you just said over and over again in Charles's comment. What we should understand is that November 5th, no matter what happens, it's just a battle and the war will continue. Okay? If we prevail on November 5th, these forces of evil, because that's what they are not going quietly into that good night. If we lose, we can't afford not to continue to fight. So this is one of those kind of existential struggle kind of things, and it really is. We're the resistance in the fight against the evil empire, and the real analogy, a real lesson in Star Wars is that the empire never went away, man. Okay, the reason they can keep making Star Wars movies because the evil empire don't go away.
It don't go
so
away.
You always will have to create some Jedi Knights that are willing to do battle, outmanned with the evil empire. Okay, and the evil empire is always a shapeshifter. Okay, that when it loses in this state, it evolves into another state, but it's here with you all the time, and you can't get lazy, you can't satisfy, and you really have to develop a warrior's mentality, and that means I really came for the fight, man. That my existential reality is the fight. Okay, I enjoy some time off from time to time, but what I would rather do, if I can choose, is I want you, and I came for your ass just like you coming for mine, and no quarter given, no quarter asked, no quarter given. And until we develop that mentality, we're going to struggle with the notion of struggle.
We think that this freedom is a destination. It's not. It is
Right.
this is a journey that
Process.
in a process every day. Mike, if I would like for you to almost be a glossary for individuals that may be listening to us for the first time. You raised 3 points earlier, and either you or Dr. Alexander, if you could just give us some context to this earlier in your description. You raised the Southern strategy, Philadelphia, Mississippi, and Willie Horton. If you could give context to each of those for someone that may be listening,
Okay.
that doesn't have a background,
Um,
that may not even.
the 1964, Lyndon Johnson gets re-elected or elected for his own term as president. He passes the Civil Rights Act of 64. Next year, he passes the Voting Rights Act. The civil rights movement is starting to become more establishment, and the country is changing. I mean, Jim Crow is being pushed back now. The South is still the South, but America has changed. There's a white reaction to that. George Wallace, Donald Trump of his era in the late 60s running for president in 1968 too. But Richard Nixon comes up with this notion of a Southern strategy because the demographics of the country were different, and the South was a Democratic stronghold. I mean, it was racist and stuff, but it was a Democratic stronghold. Richard Nixon understood that white folks were upset with Democrats about civil rights. In fact, Lyndon Johnson said to Bill Moyer, because Bill Moyer worked for him, when he signed the Civil Rights Act of 64, he said, "Do you know what I just did?" And Bill Moyer said, "Yeah, Mr. President, you signed a historic piece of legislation that'll live forever." And then Johnson said, "No, I just gave the South to the Republicans for the next 50 years." Okay, because this basically, Lyndon Johnson was a white man. He knew what white folks was going to do, but he thought he was doing the right thing. So he did it anyway. Well, Nixon creates the Southern strategy that takes what had been a bedrock part of the Republican Party was their philosophical commitment to civil rights. Because remember, the Republican Party is the anti-slave party in the 19th century. It emerges out of that era. And so he tilts the Republican Party to recruit actively bigoted white folks, as opposed to passively bigoted white folks. And it works. And he wins. He has to give up the job for his shenanigans as president. And Jimmy Carter beat Gerald Ford in 1976. And in 1980, Ronald Reagan, the governor of California, or past governor of California, runs for president. Philadelphia, Mississippi is where Cheney, Wortham, and Goodman were murdered and found in Freedom Summer in 64. So to go to Philadelphia, Mississippi as a white man announcing his candidacy for president and talking about the excesses of government and stuff was the dog whistle to white folks. Hey, remember who we are, remember who you are. We're going to put everything back in place. That's all you had to say then, because the country still is overwhelmingly white. When George H.W. Bush takes over, and after 2 terms of Reagan, he's running for president. He's running against Governor Dukakis of Massachusetts, who is more liberal. They come up with this Willie Horton there. Willie Horton was a brother that had been released from prison either early or whatever the specific issues, or they got locked up again for murder. And
So they ran this really dark commercial, basically indicating that because of Democrats, white folks are at risk because they letting out all these dangerous black folks. Another dog whistle. So this is and George H.W. Bush wins the president. Uh, Country is changing. He loses to Bill Clinton, who moderated the Democratic Party, so it wouldn't be directly opposed to Ronald Reagan. And we can talk about this later, but I think the two transformational presidents of the 20th century are Franklin Roosevelt or Ronald Reagan, because both of them were paradigm shifters, not just literally what they did, is how they redefined politics for a couple, 3 decades in the United States. So by that time, Democrats, if they want to win, are now almost moderate Republicans, as Republicans has shifted more right. Then you got W. Bush, but the country, the demographics keep changing. So you can't be subtle white supremacist, okay? It requires you to be more outspoken, because the changes, the cultural and social changes really got white folks uneasy, and the economic shift of the country from a place-based industrial economy to an interconnected global economy that's shifting jobs around, and white people are worse off historically this generation than white people had ever been from their perspective. And all of this creates angst, and Charles can talk to you about scapegoating and René Girard and stuff. So the need for these scapegoats, blaming stuff, black folks, immigrants and stuff. So none of this is new. Matter of fact, this is just all part of human character. If you really want to know the truth, you can take human history of them since we've been making it, and you'll find different iterations of what you're looking at right now in America. So that's really the frame of reference. And the real problem and the disservice that gets done to us by black leadership and white people being done a disservice by white leadership is they keep talking about this like it's some one-off variant thing, as opposed to what's the expression, Charles? This ain't a bug, it's a feature. Okay, this is the system working.
This is it
itself. Yeah, it's part of the deal. So if you're Obama giving these speeches about the America, we have never been that America. There's never any time in American history that the America Obama is talking about has ever existed. There's no place, ever, not for one single minute. And the real truth would be America is struggling to overcome its inherent flaws to form a more perfect union. I mean, if you actually read Jefferson and Madison and them, they understood the flaws. That's why they didn't let everybody vote, for that matter. And they understood that the reason they created a system that was so bifurcated and dysfunctional was to stop a king from emerging who's doing what Trump's doing. But because since we don't teach American history, we teach American myth, Jefferson and Madison were not the first Americans. They were the last Europeans. They were educated men of the Renaissance, and they wrote the Constitution looking backwards.
Predicated on what they had learned from their what they were calling at their time their oppressor.
Right, exactly. So they're looking back at kings and church and all of that kind of stuff, and they are trying to figure out a system that will mitigate that. They ain't even thinking about the future of the country. So if you want to know who the first Americans are, you got to look at who are the white men who came of age at the beginning of the 19th century, like Jackson, John C. Calhoun, Madison, those presidents. Those are the first white boys born and raised in post-colonial America. And literally all of them are white supremacists. And the South, that mindset dominates American politics and culture for 50 years. And what changes all of that is the Industrial Revolution. Okay, that 1830, the Industrial Revolution hits the world, Europe, United States. And slavery is a cash-driven, static social order economy. Capitalism is a class-driven, exploited society that requires fluid labor so that they can exploit it in different iterations, and it's not designed to, as Marx said, it basically destroys status quo. So that all of this goes into, and that's way, I'm not doing a real service I'm doing kind of disservice to that much history, but fundamentally, what you're wrestling with today is the river that has all these forces in it, and this is at the point that the river is now. But you can't, while none of that stuff literally is still here, you're inheriting the consequences of all of that when you're trying to wrestle with Trump. So Trump is not an outlier. Donald Trump is a fundamental part of the human condition, and he's very much a part of American history. And this is not the first time he showed up. It's just that we got more social media and more methods of communication. But this disease has always affected the United States. Barack Obama's bullshit notwithstanding.
You know, first of all, thank you again. Yeah, that recitation is a whole semester that you just gave us. And so Dr. Alexander, I'll defer to you and we'll close the show out for any final comments that you have. Thanks again, Mike Jones.
Again, just to kind of, put those things into context, and going back to his earlier, Mike Jones's earlier metaphorical use of the shot clock and the 3-point line. So a major battleground in that conversation, in the conversation out of which the Southern strategy comes from, centers around, or two major battlegrounds. They center around voting rights and education. The ongoing battle against so this is 70. Brown is passed in 54. They were still fighting Brown. And that was part of the whole piece, So even before Johnson starts signing whatever he signs, the fight was on just because, expanding because of the Supreme Court piece. And then when you provided some protections for voting rights, you literally, he literally threw gas on the fire, right? And so that's what you end up in that space. And it's also Nixon, that comes with, black capitalism, right? And so that started to that had a fraying and splintering effect on on black folks, and that those who were positioned to take advantage of it did, and out of that, I'd imagine you got a sizable amount of kind of the black Republican mouthpieces and ideologues that can really kind of be dated back to that point in time. And so when we're not paying attention to the trends in history, we're just necessarily vulnerable. And again, we start to think these things as one-offs, and they're not one-offs. We've seen all of this. I've heard black people say stuff like, "When did the police just start killing folks? When did they stop? They ain't never been. This is why they exist. This is this is where we get slave patrols from." I mean, it's like
the Patty boys have
the Patty rollers are patrollers. That's what Patty roller is, a distortion of patroller. And so like that's what it is. And so, that guy that killed Trayvon, he was doing what regular white men were supposed to be doing. And that was to provide additional surveillance. So all of this stuff is the same stuff. We just don't be knowing what we're looking at, because we're not engaging it. Slavery. So like we listen. So like to the black folks who be listening to that foolishness from the Republicans talking about big government. Slavery was big government.
Right.
From every last part of it. It wasn't no dude with no teeth. He ain't had no slaves. He was unemployed because of the slaves. And then his goofy self fought in the war to keep slavery, which was going to keep him unemployed and broke. And that's what we're looking at still today. And so to Mike's point, they ain't got no money either. It's just that their numbers look better because of the white folks at the top skew the distribution. So you think they got money? Them jokers ain't got no money. It's Elon Musk that got money. That skews the distribution. And so, but since we don't really know math like that, we can't really appreciate, that comparison and measures of central tendency, all that kind of stuff that you really need to be looking at to understand what we're up against and who our actual enemies are and how they present. So that continues to be the work. And yes, it's going to continue to be whatever happens in November. That's just another battle in this continuous war. And we got to double down the resistance, And so, but what we got to be clear on is that, it ain't going to be no return of the Jedi. We the Jedi. We ain't nobody coming back. So that part we got to be clear on.
Larry Bird's not walking through that door, huh?
Wait a minute.
Not for us, not for our team. What'd you say, Mike John?
Next man up.
Next
man up.
Well, let's, I think this is a perfect segue. And we've got to be, to you all's points, we got to be vigilant. My mother had a saying, the great Elizabeth Crawford Hewlett Field, in telling me to be wise. She said, she would tell me, I've never met a con man I didn't like. and I've never been tempted by something that I didn't want. So when you have those things at play, you better make sure that you are doing your due diligence and you're looking at the whole game. Because you're easy to be taken. Yeah, you used to tell me. She used to tell me that your issues are going to come shaped like a Coca-Cola bottle. That takes you
Yeah.
back to where her mind was. And we have got to be wise, and we have got to understand that this is a long-range plan, and we've got to do more of what we did here today. We spoke with an elder that has lived this. And if you notice, Mike Jones speaks about Taney, the Supreme Court justice that gave the horrible ruling with Dred Scott. And I passed by the old courthouse yesterday, and I had a feeling of warmth thinking of the resistance that was held there. He talks about John C. Calhoun. He talks about these guys matter-of-factly because, despite the fact of them being abject racist, that's the game we're in. And you've got to play that game, and you've got to play it analytically. And, so this is not a thing where our emotions can take the best of us. This is 100, 200, 300, 400-year game that we're fighting going forward. Let's play it to win.
And Larry, because you just use that term, it's another one of these spaces where we got to be careful. Analytics, you know, you got cats who are all in on sports. That if you say analytics, they're like, oh, that's messing up the game. No. So we have a whole group of folks who are being tainted, you know, because of an application of a term in a particular context. That if you suggest to them that it needs to be employed or that it somehow provides a way out, they will say no because their team loses based on analytics, based on the use of analytics. And so these are all of these, this is the range of things that we fight about because, again, this additional piece with, media and all of the various, media outlets, social media and things of that nature. So there's always misinformation and there's always disinformation. And
Larry,
we got to be more thoughtful in obtaining our
Larry,
information.
I want to add a piece of advice to what the great wisdom your mother gave you. I always suggest, here's how to look at the world, a way to look at the world. When somebody you don't know offers to give you something you didn't ask for, that they don't use, say thank you, but no thank
Absolutely.
you. Right, okay? And part of our problem is, and we're all different frat here, but we accept too many gifts from Greek. Okay, that's what happened to Troy. Okay, so somebody gave you something that you didn't ask for.
Right.
You ain't asked for Juneteenth?
No, sir. No,
No.
sir.
Okay,
I did not.
did
No,
not.
sir. I asked for civil.
Okay.
I asked for voters' rights.
You asked for the
Right.
voting rights
I asked for
extension and you
voters'
got
rights.
Juneteenth.
Yes.
You asked to vote and they gave you a day off.
Gave me.
Right.
Take it off, boy. Take that off and
They
get it
gave you a day off of a job you ain't even had.
on a job I ain't have. I ain't have. Right. I didn't. I got myself on probation right now anyway. I can take a day off. I can
right.
build some problems.
And I would advise us to also remember what Don Corleone told Sollozzo in the meeting at the office. When somebody offers you a great deal and you don't know them, I think the way you phrased it what did I do to deserve this generosity? Okay. And the point for that is nobody gives anything away. They particularly don't give things away to strangers. Okay. So, so the reality is there's a trick in it somewhere. My father taught me, he said, well, Michael, if you're going to gamble, the first thing you have to do is learn how to cheat.
Right.
And the reason you have to learn how to cheat is not so you can cheat people, so you'll know when people are cheating, trying to cheat you. Because in every game, somebody's cheating. There are no straight games.
No, sir.
Because people play to win, and luck don't have nothing to do with winning.
Not at all.
And so if it was a crap game, a card game, somebody, if you asked him, are those guys cheating? What he would say is, not no way I know about. Okay, he'll never tell you people not cheat. And you also learn an extension of that. You don't ever hustle in a game you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't never play nobody else's game. When somebody say, hey, you could do real well at that, that ain't what I do.
Yeah.
And that's what suckers do. They
That's
show up in other people's games.
Last week,
So when you can't figure out who's being cheated, yeah, when you're in a situation you can't figure out who's being cheated, you're probably the one getting cheated.
That's right. Yeah. Last week I played from the short tees with those boys, and they like to clean me out. I got to play. I've got to go back to the big boy tees. I can't. I can't do that. No. Well, listen. I want to thank you all for your time, your wisdom, and your talents, your contributions and sacrifices. You know, it just always amazes me when I hear you all's wisdoms, and I understand the sacrifices that your families and you all have taken, because you could have made a whole lot more money in this patriarchy, but you decided to serve the people. And I mean, that's probably why this space is just so warm for me and many others. I really thank you guys. And we are going to sign off until the next time we're able to be in community with you folks. We ask that you all have a great day and, become self-actualized to the extent that we can.